The roar of the crowd fades for a moment as two silhouettes emerge under the lights, one from the brutal boxing temples of Brooklyn, the other from the icy fight pits of Russia. It's a moment that feels ripped from a dream, a fantasy forged in fire and steel. Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, stands with that unmistakable glare, a predator ready to strike. Across from him, Fedor Emelianenko, the stoic storm of pride, known for dismantling legends without blinking. These two warriors never share a ring or cage in real life. But what if they did? Tyson wasn't just a fighter, he was a phenomenon. Explosive power, hypnotic head movement, and an aura of raw danger made him must-watch every time he stepped into the ring. He didn't just beat opponents, he broke them mentally before the first bell. Fedor, on the other hand, carried silence like a weapon. No theatrics, no trash talk, just cold precision and an almost mythical calmness. He was the king of chaos, thriving in moments where others faltered. Together, their legacies ruled two entirely different worlds. But if those worlds collided, what kind of storm would that create? The clash wouldn't be about titles or belts. It would be about dominance, about the kind of power that shakes arenas and forces grown men to question their courage. Tyson, with his blitzkrieg style and animalistic intensity, versus Fedor, with his grappling mastery and thunderous hands, built a contrast that goes beyond styles. It's a collision of philosophies. Rage against restraint, fire versus ice. Two unstoppable forces whose paths never crossed until now. Fans have debated it for years on forums, in barbershops, and late-night podcasts. Could Tyson's peekaboo defense and devastating uppercuts stop Fedor before the takedown? Or would Fedor weather the early storm, dragging Tyson into deep waters, where ground and pound and sambo supremacy would take over? Each man brings weapons that could end the fight in seconds, and yet the real war would be psychological. Would Tyson's aggression rile the unshakable Russian? Could Fedor's eerie calm disarm the most feared puncher in boxing history? As the hypothetical bell rings, the scene is set. Tyson bouncing, eyes locked like a tiger stalking prey. Fedor emotionless, already computing angles and escape routes. No script, no safety net, just instinct and legacy clashing in a moment that could swing either way with a single mistake. Every second feels like it could birth a highlight or a nightmare. And as they step forward, fists loaded, destinies clashing. One of them makes the first move. The first punch came fast, too fast for the crowd to even react. Tyson's left hook whistled through the air and clipped Fedor's guard, with a thud that echoed like a warning. For a moment, the Russian took a step back, not from fear, but calculation. He felt the force, the kind of raw, terrifying strength that could end an entire fight in one clean connection. But he didn't flinch. Instead, he lowered his stance, eyes narrowing, as if welcoming the storm. Tyson, fueled by instinct and the rhythm of chaos, launched again. This time, a quick right to the body followed by a rising uppercut. Fedor dipped under it just in time, grabbing Tyson's waist with the precision of someone who's been here 1,000 times before. In an instant, the crowd gasped, not because of the takedown, but what came after. Tyson didn't go down. He planted his feet, spread his base, and unleashed short, brutal punches to the side of Fedor's head that forced even the stoic veteran to adjust. It was no longer a boxing match, nor was it a standard MMA bout. It had morphed into something far more primal. Commentators struggled to describe what they were seeing. Fedor wasn't just fighting a striker. He was battling a force of nature that refused to follow the script. Tyson, in turn, wasn't just trying to land a KO. He was adapting in real time, tapping into survival instincts rarely seen outside life or death moments. The rules didn't matter now. It was about who could break the other first, not physically, but mentally. And just when it seemed Fedor was beginning to steer the battle into his world, the unexpected happened. Midway through a clinch near the cage, Tyson twisted his body and reversed Fedor into the fence with the raw power of a bulldozer. The crowd erupted as the boxer, long thought to be helpless in grappling, began landing short elbows with frightening speed. Fedor covered up, absorbing them like a man used to pain, but his footing faltered. He wasn't overwhelmed, but for the first time, he looked human. And then, out of nowhere, Fedor smiled. It was brief, so quick it almost went unnoticed. But it changed everything. Because what came next wasn't a counter or a retreat. It was a trap. With a calculated shift, Fedor dropped to one knee and pulled Tyson forward, locking in a sneaky trip that sent both men crashing to the canvas. Tyson, legs tangled, tried to scramble, but Fedor had already wrapped an arm around his neck. Not in a full choke, but enough to create panic. The boxer's gloves clawed for space, and for a moment, the air buzzed with the thought that it might be over. But Tyson didn't tap. He didn't freeze. Instead, he pushed off the mat with a roar that stunned the audience and rolled Fedor halfway off him. Now both were bleeding. Tyson from the brow, Fedor from the mouth, and the cage seemed smaller with each breath. They rose again, slower this time, but even more dangerous. And as they circled each other, battered yet unbroken, one question loomed louder than the chants around them. What happens when two unstoppable spirits find out they can't destroy each other yet? One final exchange would decide everything. Both men stood in the center of the cage, battered, breathing hard, and yet neither looked ready to surrender. Tyson's left eye was swelling shut, blood streaking down his cheek, but his feet were still bouncing, fists twitching with that dangerous rhythm. Fedor, his mouth bloodied and one leg clearly compromised from those brutal body shots, kept circling, calm as ever, his eyes scanning Tyson's every twitch. No referee, no crowd, no coaches could interrupt this moment. It was pure, undiluted combat at its highest level. Tyson lunged, not with a wild punch, but a sharp feint, baiting Fedor just enough to step in. That's when it happened. A right hook crashed into Fedor's temple, snapping his head sideways. He staggered, knees buckling, and for a second the air seemed to vanish from the arena. Tyson saw his chance. He rushed in with a flurry, each punch thrown with the fury of a man who knew the clock was ticking. But Fedor, even as his legs betrayed him, managed to duck under the final shot and clinch again, this time wrapping both arms around Tyson's midsection. With every ounce of strength left, Fedor lifted and dumped Tyson to the mat. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't clean, but it was enough. Tyson tried to twist free, but fatigue was setting in, his movements slowing, breath ragged. Fedor transitioned, inch by inch, until he mounted Tyson and raised a fist. But it didn't fall. Not right away. The crowd roared, waiting for the final strike. But Fedor hesitated, just for a moment, studying Tyson's face, still defiant, still fighting. Then, with a short, brutal burst, he unleashed a storm of punches that forced the referee to dive in. It was over. Fedor rolled off, his chest heaving, eyes closed, blood dripping from his lips. Tyson sat up seconds later, dazed but conscious, refusing the stretcher, insisting on standing under his own power. The crowd, stunned into silence for a moment, erupted into applause, not for the victor alone, but for both men, for the war they had just survived, for the legacy they had dared to write in fire and pain. They met in the center again. No trash talk, no bravado, just a nod. Two men from different worlds, bonded now by something beyond sport. And yet, just when it felt like the story had settled, the twist emerged, not from inside the cage, but from behind the scenes. Cameras caught a shadow near the backstage curtain, another legend watching it all unfold. A figure with championship gold in his past, eyes sharp, jaw set. He wasn't there to celebrate. He was there with a message. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. His presence wasn't coincidence. It was a challenge. Because while Tyson vs. Fedor had given the world a taste of the impossible, the fight world had just opened a new door. One where no dream matchup was off limits, no era too distant. And now, as the dust settled over this unforgettable battle, the question wasn't just who won, but who was next.